Hey everyone, it's Elle. Today I'm going to be starting a new project. This idea is not original, and it's been all over BookTube where you try to read like someone or you read someone's favorites. A lot of people do reading other booktubers' favorites or reading their least favorites. Today I'm going to be reading Obama's favorite books. So basically, this idea arose because of all of the other people who have already done this, and also because I started reading his book, A Promised Land, and he was talking about a lot of how he likes to read. And I've seen his lists come out before. He publishes one at the end of every year, and he reads a lot of front lists. So I have decided that I am going to see if Obama and I have similar reading tastes. Hey, Elle from the future. So I started editing this video and it was going to be super long. So I have decided that this is going to be part one of 2 parts. And the first part is going to be fiction and the second part is going to be nonfiction. So check for that when it comes out. But for now, we will go through the fiction reads from Obama's list. I'm such a professional, guys. I learned how to screen record. Okay, I can't find a list for 2016 at the end of the year. I found his summer list, so let's go through that one. The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. Okay, I own that, and I read The Nickel Boys recently and really liked it, so I would like to get to that. Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins, I've read. Oh, this is what made his cut in 2015 for summer reading. All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. I DNF'd that. The Lowland by Jhumpa Lahiri. Okay, so from that list, his 2015 and 2016 summer lists, do I own The Lowland? I actually don't think I do. I think I only own The Namesake. Yeah, I own The Underground Railroad, so that one. Can you see that? This is gonna be dangerous. We're gonna wish I didn't do that at some point. Okay, so now we're on to his actual 2017 list, and that's like an end of year list. Here's the full list. The Power by Naomi Alderman. I've heard of it. I'm intrigued, but I've also heard bad things about it. Exit West. I read that maybe a few years ago, and I liked it, but I didn't really love it. I was having a hard time with, I think, the pace and the constant jumping from place to place, which was kind of the point of the book, but I don't know, something about it didn't really totally jive with me, but I thought it was good. 5 Carat Soul. I've heard James McBride. I think he's come out with something recently. Deacon something? I don't know. But I don't own this. Anything is Possible by Elizabeth Strout. So I have heard a lot about Elizabeth Strout, but I think that I want to start with Olive Kitteridge, so I won't go for that one. A Gentleman in Moscow. Okay, this is a book I've seen at my used bookstore quite a bit, and I think I've seen a Book Olive talk about it, and I'm not gonna lie, the cover just doesn't make me want to read it at all. So is it good? Sing Unburied Sing. I very recently DNF'd this book. Again, I do not DNF books because they're bad. The writing was just a struggle for me. I like pretty purple prose, but I really don't like when metaphors don't make sense, and there's a lot of really long metaphors that I just wanted to like take a red pen and cross them out because they were just, in my opinion, they weren't helping the story. Anyway, I think that's his 2017 list, so let's go on to 2018. Oh, Barack Obama's 29 favorite books of 2018. Okay, he has 29 favorites. I love that because you watch like booktubers end of the years and it's like they try to whittle it down to 10 or maybe 20. No, Obama's just like 29. I had 29 favorites. I love it. Okay. An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. I have also read this, and it was fine for me. I just didn't connect to it like everyone else does. Plotting wise, there's like kind of a love triangle thing going on, and I'm not going to say I hate any trope, but love triangles are a really hard sell for me. So, yep, let's move on. Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I own this book. I have interest in reading this book. However, my interest has dwindled a bit as I have learned about Adichie's problematic statements regarding trans folks. I mean, I don't want to get into separating an artist from their art because that's a whole video and everyone has their own opinions on that. However, she is notably known to be a feminist. So to find out that someone who has so much feminist work and was applauded in the feminist community wasn't willing to say that trans women are women makes me less inclined to pick up her book. The Grain of Wheat. Oh, I'm not going to try to pronounce that name. Interesting. This is a Penguin Classics edition of something. Kenyan writer. Okay. Is this an, oh, it's in 1967. Okay, I have been trying to find classics from around the world to incorporate into my reading, so maybe I'll do this one. Cool. A House for Mr. Biswas takes place in Trinidad, which is cool, but I am trying to prioritize books that I actually own, so maybe we'll keep going. Memoir, not in the mood. Things Fall Apart. I had to read this when I was in high school, and I don't remember anything about it because, story time, I procrastinated on reading it, but I think I remember it being short, so I was like, oh, I'll just read it the day before we have to talk about it in class. And then that weekend, I went to a party, and I got super drunk, and I was very hungover, and I was laying there reading a chapter and then passing out for a while and then reading a chapter. So I definitely did not get everything I could out of this book, and I believe it's a trilogy. Yeah, maybe I'll reread that. I've been trying to go back and reread some books I read in high school when I have thoughts about high schoolers reading classics that I don't think we need to get into right now, but I want to reread some because I really feel like I did not appreciate them for what they were because I wasn't as critical as a reader because my brain wasn't developed all the way yet. Warlight. Nope, haven't heard of it. Okay. Asymmetry by Lisa Halliday. I own this. I think I bought it because I saw it at my used bookstore and I knew that Obama had read it and liked it. Divided into 3 sections, it explores the imbalance underpinning human conditions. Ooh, I like books that are broken up into different sections and have totally different vibes in each section. I really like interconnected short stories. I'm not sure if that's what this is, but okay. This one's a contender. Feel Free by Zadie Smith. I own some Zadie Smith on my Kindle, but I don't think it's this one. Florida by Lauren Groff. Okay, so I got this out of the library basically when it came out, and I read a few of the short stories in it, and then I DNF'd it because I just wasn't in the mood. It was definitely a vibe, but I've thought about it a few times since then. Immigrant Montana. Oh, that sounds interesting. I hadn't heard of that. Okay, I'm into it. The Largest of the Sea Maiden. I think I've seen this book before and I decided I wasn't going to read it. There by Tommy Orange. I have read this. I really loved it. So there's something we got in common already. Washington Black by S.C. Adugian. I also read this and I wanted to love this book. There's very distinct sections, and the first section I loved. And then there was like way different pacing as it moved on, and you're seeing different characters, and it's such a hard one to talk about. I get people's love for it. I just had a really hard time with the pacing of it. We're going on to 2019. this is going to be forever and a half. I need to go through these a little bit faster if I want this to not be like a 2-hour vlog. So, 19 favorite books from 2019. Cute, cute. We love that on BookTube. Girl, Woman, Other by Bernadine Evaristo. I own this and I really want to read it. Lost Children Archive. Heard a lot about this. I was following a lot of people who were reading this for the Women's Prize, and based off of people's thoughts, I decided I didn't want to read it. Lot, Stories by Brian Washington. This is also a book I want to read. Normal People by Sally Rooney. Really? He liked this book. That's interesting. I really liked this book too. I liked how unlikable the characters are. I found it super relatable to me when I was in my early 20s. And I know a lot of people really hate the writing, but the writing resonates really well with me. So interesting that Obama liked this book. Okay. Orphan Master's Son. Haven't heard of it. The Topeka School. No. Trust Exercise. I have not heard anything good about this book, so I'm going to go with a no. We Live in Water. Sounds like it could be interesting, but I don't think I want to. We're going to go on to 2020. Okay, so Homeland Elegies. I think I've only heard people haul it. I don't think I've ever heard anyone talk about the actual reading experience, so on my radar, but I don't know. Jack by Marilyn Robinson. Nope. Luster by Raven Leilani. Yes, I do have an interest in this one as well. I've been hearing really good things about it. How Much of These Hills is Gold? I'm also very interested in reading that book. Long Bright River. Nope. Deacon King Kong. This is the one I remember by James McBride. It hasn't made it onto my radar because I've heard people talk about it, but I don't think I've heard anyone actually review it. So I don't really know what it's about. The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. I do want to read it, but I think I want to read that with passing, so I don't think I'm going to do that for this project. The Glass Hotel. Okay, I just read her other book, Station 11, and I really liked how it all came together, but I wasn't super invested in any one part of it. The Ministry for the Future, haven't heard of. Sharks in the Time of Saviors, nope. Missionaries, nope. Is that it? Okay, well, I am going to pop up all of the books that are contenders for this list. So these are the books that I'm going to mood read through. At the moment, I'm thinking maybe 6, but we will see where I go from here. So I will cut to me reading the first book. I think I showed the books that I owned before, but I also now own Luster by Raven Leilani. I found this at my bookstore in the sale section. You gave a donation of $2 for it, so that was exciting. So we're looking at Luster, Asymmetry, Girl, Woman, Other, and The Underground Railroad. I think I'm just gonna read the first few lines of each one and see which one I am most interested in reading right now. So it was definitely between these two, but this one just made me chuckle. It has an interesting opening scene and opening line, so I'm definitely going for this one. Okay, so checking in, I read the first 2 chapters of this so far, and it's pretty short. I hadn't realized how short it was. And it's very interesting. So the first things I've noticed are the imagery. It's very unsettling and gross for the most part. And the second thing I've kind of noticed is the run-on sentences. And normally I'm not a huge fan of it because it feels very stream of consciousness, but I'm able to follow these run-on sentences quite well. Premise of this book, a black woman becomes involved with a white man who is, as we know it, in an open relationship. But yeah, the imagery has been interesting, and the writing style has also been interesting to get into the groove of. So I think that's all I got for a check-in tonight. Okay, so I'm about halfway through the book, and I I haven't ever done this vlog style where I'm like checking in part of the way through a book and like trying to formulate thoughts about it, and that's just been an interesting experience in itself. But I was like, this morning I was watching Brian from Bookish's video about like a follow-up to his video about art and subjectivity, which was a follow-up to other people's videos. I'll link it below, and then like you can find the links to all of the other ones. But as I'm reading this book has now weighed in on the subjectivity versus objectivity conversation in art, so I just wanted to quote it because I think it's so funny when your life, like different facets of your life or different facets of thought kind of intersect. I always love when that happens. It would happen sometimes when I was in college taking different courses that had nothing to do with each other, but somehow like the topics or the people that were coming up would still intersect, and I just always thought that was interesting. So I think it's interesting enough to turn on my vlog for it. So here we go. She says art is subjective, and technically that is the moral of the story, though it is also implied that everyone in the kingdom thinks her art is bad, which, if she is making art that is meant to be seen by others, is a seriously tough titty. The comfort of audience subjectivity pretty much null when the audience is everyone, and everyone has decided, subjectively, that the art is bad. Anyway, do I have any other thoughts on this book right now? It's going on in the same kind of capacity. I mean, I really think that if you read the first chapter and you're not into like the style or the execution of it or the flow, you wouldn't like it continuing, because like I feel like so much of this book is stylistic choices and how the author chooses to portray everything, and there's also the fact that you're in see, we talk about unlikable characters a lot in the bookish community, and I don't know if I would even call her unlikable, because she's not really mean to people out loud. She just has thoughts that maybe aren't all that nice, and maybe she's not taking into account people's feelings, but like, maybe I'm cynical because that's how maybe I'm just thinking subjectively about my own head works, but don't we all kind of have thoughts about people like that, where they're not that nice, but we wouldn't actually vocalize them ever? Like, I don't know. Maybe you're just finding out that I'm not a nice person, but yeah, I wouldn't call her unlikable. Okay, so I just finished Luster. I don't really know why I'm holding it up since you can't actually see what the book is. And I'm not sure how to articulate how I feel about it. I liked it. It was an enjoyable reading experience. It was very quick. I found the I guess writing style. There's like short sentences, and then there's like long sentences with a lot of like semicolons and commas, so it just flowed really well for me. I really enjoyed the writing of it. I liked that she brought your eye to like the grotesque and the mundane, and there was a bit of a mundaneness just to the vibe of the book, while knowing that nothing about the plot was really mundane, and how the protagonist and became involved in the life of this couple. It's a book that I really like. What do I want to say? The protagonist I found very interesting. I like protagonists that are, I like messy women in their 20s, and people not having their shit figured out. I appreciate that perspective, and I really liked just, there was it wasn't focusing like directly on race and gender, but there was just this matter-of-factness to those sorts of conversations that were occurring, and I feel like a lot of it wasn't on the page in a sense that, how do I want to say this? Like, she described things on the page, but there was so much more that could be said. It was just like a snippet to get you thinking, and so I feel like this book would be really great for like a book club or something, because I think that there's so much that you can talk about outside of the context of what the author actually gave to you, which is always enjoyable in a reading experience. So I'm going to put up a graphic of all the books I've already read that Obama likes, and if I liked them, I disliked them, or I DNF'd them, so I'll pop that up. And then I'm going to put this in the like category. I don't think it's a book that'll stick with me, that I'll like think about a lot, but I did appreciate it as I was reading it. So now I'm going to move on to one of the other books that I have, which I'm just going to read again. I'm going to read the first few sentences and kind of see which writing style works for me. That's basically how I mood read. I mood read based on genre, I guess, sometimes if I'm in the mood for a specific genre, but mainly it's just writing style. So I'm just gonna look at these three real quick and see which one's gonna work for me. Okay, I'm appreciating the conversational tone that the writing has in the first paragraph of this one, so I'm going with Asymmetry next. Okay, so I'm actually only 15 pages into this, but it's just strange because I didn't really look at I knew what Luster was about because I've heard a lot of people talk about it on BookTube recently, and I knew that there was like an affair between an older man and older white man and a younger black woman, and I didn't know the plot of this at all, and it starts out with not an affair, but like a relationship of sorts between an older man and a younger woman, and I just thought that was a little strange, reading back to back from a recommendation list from Obama. So I'm like thinking about, after I read all of these, like, am I going to just see if I have similar taste to Obama or try to analyze Obama's book taste? I'm at about the 60-page mark, and I'm not sure if I'm liking this book. It's very similar to the previous book I read, which is part of, I think, the problem it's not very similar. I think I'm comparing it because it's about, like, a younger woman having an affair with an older man, and I don't like reading books that have, like, the same vibe back to back. Like, this one, it's called Asymmetry because, like, halfway through, we're gonna get, like, a really jarring change in what we're following. Like, I don't even think we'll be following the same characters, so part of that makes me want to push on, but the banter I'm not really caring about. There's some italicized parts that I'm just like, I'm not getting the point of, and where Luster had like multiple dimensions to what it was accomplishing with its story and plot, this feels very much just like what we're getting on the page. Like, there's not much discourse going on, and it's not really making me think, which the plot isn't that interesting, so it should be getting me to think. Like, we need one thing going on, and so I'm gonna read probably the next chapter, and if I'm not enjoying it, I think I'm just gonna DNF. I got to the next chapter. I'm on page like 95 in this, and I'm DNFing it. I'm just bored, and I know that, like, it goes on and there's going to be a new section, you're going to be following someone new, and I read the first part of that just to see if it would keep me intrigued, but it's just not doing it for me. I don't want to keep forcing myself through this, and there was just a lot of baseball references too that I literally was skimming those sections. And once I get to a point where I'm skimming a book, I'm like, I should just put this down. So this is a DNF for me. I'll put up the little graphic, and Asymmetry is going into the DNF section. So that's all I got for now. Okay, time for a check-in. I am reading Girl, Woman, Other currently. And I hadn't picked it up before because the writing style just seems super strange. Like, it is. I'm now like 75 pages in. I'm like 2 people in, so this is plot. This is a book told in many parts. It seems like it might have like the vibe of interconnected stories where we're following a bunch of different women so far, and so there's different chapters, and it's like chunked with 3 people per chapter. So I've read the first 2 people in the first chapter, and my thoughts are so far is that, like, this book is super well acclaimed. It won the Booker. It's well beloved on BookTube from the reviews I've seen of it. Really, everyone seems to love it. I think I've seen one person DNF it. And so far, it's hard for me to get into the writing. Not much punctuation. There's a lot of page breaks, and then there's a lot of paragraph breaks where it almost feels like it's written like a like a spoken word type thing where you're supposed to get a cadence based on them using, or the author using paragraph breaks. And I'm the cadence works. I'm just having I'm struggling like vibing with the cadence, and then it seems like if I try to stop reading part of the way through one person's chapter or part of the chapter, then I kind of get lost because we don't really have punctuation. So, we meet a character and the chapter is like about that character, but then they are interacting with other people and we're getting these other people's backstories. And suddenly now when you go back in, or when I go back in, I'm like reading from like a first person perspective of another character. So I'm having a hard time like keeping up with who is talking if I take breaks while I'm reading this. So I feel like I almost have to like take this in doses where I'm reading one person's part and not taking breaks, and then ending that, and then not starting a new person's chapter until I know I have enough time to get through the whole thing. So we'll see if I can actually accomplish that. But yeah, those are my thoughts so far. I don't know when I'll check in. I'm like lukewarm on this book right now, but I feel like it has the potential to really blossom, especially as I start to see these characters interact more. Okay, checking in on Girl, Woman, Other. I am this far in, so yeah, I'm like 310 pages in. I wanted to talk about some of the themes that I didn't know going into it. So there's a big conversation about female relationships, of course, but mother-daughter relationships. And it's not in the capacity of looking specifically at the female, like the mother-daughter relationships dynamics. It's more like you see one perspective of how the mother looks at the relationship, and then the next chapter, the next part, you see how the daughter looks at the perspective, or vice versa. And they have very different ideas of what their relationship looks like and their treatments of each other. It's an interesting way to look at relationships. And then how the characters relate to each other outside of that is, for the most part, it can be very subtle, which I also really appreciate. I just had a perspective from a white woman, which I wasn't expecting. I don't think I had heard anyone talk about that. It took me until Dominique's chapter to really get into the writing style, but now I'm like fully convinced and really enjoy it. And found like my groove with it. I'm hoping that the end of this book has something where everything wraps up really well, and I feel like that will really like cinch everything up for me. I'm already really enjoying it, but I want something to close everything and like bring everything together a little bit more. And I can see why this won the Booker, because I know for prizes like that, they read books multiple times, and I feel like this is a book that you would get a lot more on a second reading, because you would get to see the relationships a bit more and pick up on more details of them as you're going through. Okay, I finished the book, and I don't know quite how I want to talk about it because there is just so much going on in it. It tackled so many different themes and ideas, and there was just such an array of perspectives of Black women that lived on the pages of this. There were women in domestic violence situations, which is on the page, so just be mindful of that. There were women, queer women, lesbian women, there was a non-binary character, there were people who were closeted homophobes, there were people who were racist, there were people who were mothers, there were grandmothers, there were daughters, there was relationships between those people. There was just so many different voices. Like, I was reading, I never read the description of a book all the way through really before I get into it, or before I start it. I read it like as I'm reading it, and it says this is a polyphonic social novel, and that's just such a concise way of describing this piece of literature. It did kind of wrap itself up in the way that I thought it might. Like, not that I knew what was coming, but I was hoping for some sort of closure. I'm not totally sure if I loved the ending or not. I feel like this is one of these books that, like, there's just so much to digest and so many perspectives, and I mean, it's perspectives you love and perspectives you hate. That was one thing I really liked about this. Like, it wasn't just showing me the type of people I wanted to see. It was bringing life into the people who I may not share the opinions of, and doing it in a really interesting way. And it was just, I really appreciated what this book did. I can definitely see why it won a prize. I also can see why Obama liked it, because there was just so many different voices, and after reading his memoir, he talks a lot about always trying to understand what another person's experience is and what someone is going through, and understand people as humans, and this humanizes so many different mindsets, and so I can see why he liked this. This is a book that I'm going to have to sit with a while. Like, it's not like I finished it and I was like, oh my God, I love this. This is the best book I've ever read. But I feel like it'll grow in my appreciation for it as time goes on. So this is now, I don't know what book number I'm on, 3 or 4. Anyway, I'm going to pop it up on the screen. This is definitely going into the like section. I really appreciated this. Okay, I'm back fairly quickly. I just started reading How Much of These Hills is Gold. I'm on page 2 and I'm put off a little bit, and I wish I wasn't. So I'm going to keep reading it, and I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt. I just finished the first chapter and I am very unconvinced, but I will persevere for one more chapter, I think, and then I might DNF this one. I lied. I'm DNFing it at page 23. There's something about this, what's happening, the language, I don't know. I think it's a combination of everything, but I'm finding it very off-putting, so I'm just gonna DNF this book and move on to the next one. As you could see from the last clip, I was highly unamused by this book, and I forgot to mention that I needed a pop-up on my screen and add this to the DNF section. So I find it very interesting that so far on this project, I have 2 that I enjoyed quite a bit and 2 that I did not finish. I think at the end of this, I will interpret that a bit, but I think I'm only going to read one more book for this project at this point, and we're just gonna tip the scales in favor of one direction. Checking in before my battery dies on my phone. So I started 2 books. I started The Underground Railroad, and I'm currently listening to this on audio. I'm about halfway through, and I'm enjoying, like, the plot progression, but it doesn't have the same, like, storytelling mastery that I saw in the Nickel Boys that I really fell in love with. Things just seem to be happening. We're kind of moving from place to place fairly quickly, and I'm hoping things, like, tie up and, like, loose ends get resolved, because, like, things happen and then we move on from them, and I kind of think, like, what was the point in that? Especially with how plot-driven this is. And then I'm reading A Grain of Wheat, and I'm not very far in. I'm only a few chapters in. This one, I can't really say much about it so far, but I have started it, so I will have 2 more books on the list. I will be checking in probably on the Underground Railroad next. So I finished this, and I had been seeing it getting good reviews everywhere, but I honestly don't really know how I feel about it. I found the plot, like, progresses forward well, and it kept me interested and kept me wanting to keep picking up the book and listening to it. But the characters, all the side characters, like, because the plot moves from, like, point to point and place to place so quickly, you never really get to care for any of the side characters. So then when events happen, it didn't have, like, the impact that I was that I think it was intended to have. I think too, like I was saying before, I'm just a bit disappointed because in comparison to the Nickel Boys, just the character building, the storytelling, it wasn't quite at the same level. And there was this thing that was happening narratively where we would get a character's like story through our protagonist. Like Cora would be interacting with a character. We'd kind of see them through her interactions, and then we'd get this like interlude of their story, but by that point it was too late to care about them. And in the last instance that this happened in, it made sense. I couldn't see them revealing this information any other way, so I feel like he chose to write the book like that to make that one time make sense, and it just didn't really work for me. So yeah, I'm popping this in the neutral section, and then the last book that I'm reading that I've already started is A Grain of Wheat. Okay, I keep procrastinating on doing a check-in on A Grain of Wheat. I am currently about halfway through the book, and I think I keep procrastinating on it because I don't really fully know what the plot is. I don't really think there is a plot. Like, it's hard to describe. So this takes place in Kenya during the Mau Mau Revolution, or the Kenyan emergency, and it's essentially when Black Kenyans fought for independence from Britain, and it went on for many years. And this follows a group of people from a village through time before, during, after this rebellion, and it takes place over the course of, I think, 10-ish years, and we're kind of just following a bunch of different characters, and I think it's gonna all come to something. I'm just not really sure what it is yet, so it's hard for me to have an opinion because we're kind of just seeing a lot of different things happen. Also, I'm very confused by the cover of this book. My cat is smelling my hands right now because I just ate toast with butter on it, and she's a little butter queen. I'm confused by this cover because there are some, like, this kitty. Oh my god. This person is white and they look young. And I'm halfway through the book, and there are some white characters, but most of them are black, and none of the white characters I've met are young. So I'm like, who is this? Like, what is this character or art, or cover art? Is this relevant, or like, I'm very confused by it right now. Hopefully I will get done with this soon and wrap this up because this book is taking me forever to read. My cat is sitting on my computer. You little typer girl? She's hard at work. I finished the book, and I agree completely with what I said before. This is the type of book that it's really hard to talk about unless you've read the whole thing through, which has been an interesting experience just to learn while doing this project. First off, this white boy is never identified, so very confused by the cover. Let's talk about the actual plot of the book. So it takes place over the course of many years, but like not chronologically. It takes place during the Kenyan emergency, which is when Black Kenyans rebelled against, or I don't know if that's the right way to say that, but protested the white British colonization of their country and them even being there, and it led to like a 10-year war, and the Kenyans were eventually successful, and there is like this day of celebration where they celebrate their independence, and I don't remember what it's called, Uruhu. I'm probably saying it wrong or remembering it incorrectly, and we're kind of gearing up this village. We're learning about all the people who live there and some other people that are connected to the place. and we're exploring the relationships between them through time. This really speaks to how colonization has impacted Kenyan people. It speaks not just the people, the villages, the civilization. It talks about how some people were put in detention facilities and how that impacts their life, and then people were really being almost detained in their own villages after their villages were destroyed in some capacity. And it speaks to the relationship between the whites and the blacks, and focuses on the just relationships in general, and the relationship of some people where they believe the white colonizers are a positive and they try to get onto their side. And it's also about disillusion between people in the village. The book's writing, and I've noticed this with books that I read that are non-Western perspectives, that there's this tendency to, or not, I shouldn't say tendency, I see it more often where we kind of sway between first and second and third. There were some times where it was saying our community, and it felt like it was a collective second person. There were some times where it felt like it was a direct second person where I was talking to you. It was third person for most of it, but you would kind of fall into specific people's heads as you were learning their story. So, and narratively, it wasn't chronological at all. Sometimes we were being told someone's background through a story that someone was actually vocalizing, and sometimes we got it as background in paragraph form. And those types of things don't really bother me. I actually just find it interesting to see how different narratives can be told, and it could be successful in different formats. I'm glad I read the book. I don't know if I enjoyed the actual reading process, but I enjoy the fact that I read it. If I'm going off of just enjoyment with my chart, this is the one I'm having a hard time with, because if I go with enjoyment in the actual reading experience, it would be neutral. But as I sat on the book since I finished this last night, I think I liked it. And it's interesting because with the Underground Railroad, I put it in the neutral section. While I enjoyed the book as I was reading it, I enjoyed the reading experience, I had kind of, as I discussed, qualms with the actual book itself, with the setup, with the plot, and all of that. So it's hard. This is why I don't rate books. I have a whole video on that. I think I might put it in the liked section. I think I liked this. I need to kind of digest it for a while. Anyway, for now, it's popping into the light section. And that actually completes this project. So I'm just going to pop the graphic up on the screen. I think that it's a really interesting mix because I liked or loved most of them. I'm not that neutral about, the neutral and DNFs are almost equivalent to the likes and loves. So it's it's kind of all over the place. I feel like Obama and my taste is very hit and miss. Now, I think that the neutrals are much more indicative. I'm just more likely to DNF a book. But this DNF rate is a lot higher than the DNF rate I have amongst my normal reads. So I wouldn't say Obama's list is a great place maybe for me to pick up. I don't know. It's hard to say. I think that I'm either going to love it or I'm going to DNF it, which is just kind of an interesting thing to look at least when it comes to his fiction. Let's talk about what I think Obama's tastes are. I think that he likes a lot of literary fiction. I mean, if you look at his lists, it's not really that hard to pinpoint that. I think specifically he likes to read narratives by BIPOC authors. I think that he likes books that are very relationship dominant. He likes the exploration between lovers, between friends, relationships between family members, looking at their normal people, luster, An American Marriage, Girl, Woman, Other, and then this one, A Grain of Wheat. Those are all books that I probably missed some. I mean, Exit West also. All of these are looking at dynamics between people. Reading his memoir this isn't surprising to me because he always is trying to understand different people's perspectives. I think I talked about this earlier on. So I think that that is something that is easily identifiable in his reading taste. Now I want to recommend some books to him. I know he'll never see this, but it's fun. I love recommending books to people. I love figuring out someone's tastes and then making book recommendations based on their taste. It's like an adventure to me. It's a challenge of like, I will figure out your reading taste. I will figure out the perfect book for you. And if I recommend something, I want to hear people's feedback on it afterwards because I want to know, okay, so they like this type of thing, but it wasn't the plot they liked, it was the writing they liked, or it wasn't the characters they liked, it was this. What I would recommend is that he explore outside of literary fiction because he can get a lot of these things that he loves in genre fiction. So, as an example, the Broken Earth trilogy. That explores relationships between families. It explores slavery mentality in society. I'm not hitting all the themes, but he loves that type of thematic content. And then it's a lot about familial relationships. I think he would like the Broken Earth trilogy quite a bit. As a thriller, I think he would like When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. It explores the relationship between a person in the neighborhood they grew up in, between black folks and white folks, in black culture and white culture, of gentrification, and it does it in a thriller capacity. So it has all of those themes and a relationship between a mother and daughter. So it has all the themes that he would enjoy. It's just in a format that I think is a little bit outside of his comfort zone. Those are just two books I could think of off the top of my head that I would recommend that he read. But anyway, this has been a really fun experiment. I don't think I have anything else to say on the matter. If you've watched this whole video, thank you for being here. This is a new thing I'm trying on my channel, this vlog style, this talking through books as I'm reading them. I like consuming thematic content where it's like my favorites of this type of genre, those types of things. So it's kind of the content I want to create because it's the type of content that I enjoy consuming. So I would just like appreciate your feedback on this. And if you like these types of videos, I guess regardless, I might keep making them anyway. The right audience will come, I guess, is going to be my mentality. That is all I got for this video. Thanks again for watching if you stuck around to the end, and until next time, happy reading.